Okay, so he's your sovereign ruler and he understands you, right? All right, can
Mhm.
y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Are you? Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. They
What-
can't see you, but
One, the 16th year, AD 10. The incarnated Son passed through infancy and experienced an uneventful childhood. Then he emerged from that testing and trying trans
transition.
transition stage between childhood and young manhood. He became the adolescent Jesus.
All right. Yeah, let me see if I can adjust this so we can see both of us.
Let me sit in your lap.
Huh?
Let me sit in your lap.
No, I'm gonna try to change this so people can see you too.
I don't have to, honey.
I know, but that's as far as it can go. Where they still can't see you.
That's easy. Let's just go. Oh, the chairs.
Well, I tried anyway.
You did. Thank you.
All right. I look like I'm far away, probably a little bit, but that's okay.
No,
Yeah.
you're fine.
All right. This year, he attained his full physical growth. He was virile and comely youth. He became increasingly sober and serious, but he was kind and sympathetic. His eyes was kind but searching. His smile was always engaging and reassuring. His voice was musical but authoritative. His greeting cordial but unaffected. Always, even in the most commonplace of contacts, there seemed to be evidence, the touch of a twofold nature, the human and the divine. Ever he displayed this combination of sympathy, friend, and authoritative teacher. And these personality traits began early to become manifest even in these adolescent years. So people could tell that he was that way even early. All
Yeah,
right.
I find it interesting the musical voice.
I know the musical voice and the fact that he played a harp too. I
Yeah.
mean, people people don't think of Jesus as a musician, but obviously he was, and obviously he was a very good musician too,
And he sang well.
and he sang well. So let me see if I can adjust this way a little bit. You're over here close too, aren't you?
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that.
No, don't sit.
I block part of it.
Okay, next.
Rodney.
That's you,
Yeah.
Pam. Pam,
Okay. I think it.
did I
Rodney,
change?
did you just speak, Rodney?
No.
Okay, Rodney's next.
Rodney's.
I'm sorry.
Okay. This physically strong and robust youth also acquired the full growth of his human intellect, not the full experience of human thinking, but the fullness of capacity for such intellectual development. He possessed a healthy and well proportioned body, a keen and analytic mind, a kind and sympathetic disposition, a somewhat fluctuating but aggressive temperament, all of which were becoming organized into a strong, striking, and attractive personality.
So you can see how he progressed over time. He grew up just like every other adolescent, but they're describing how the different things that he learned and the different things he possessed as he grew up, how he became the man that we know him as, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Pam, would you take the next
As time went on, it became more difficult for his mother and his brothers and sisters to understand him. They stumbled over his sayings and misinterpreted his doings. They were all unfitted to comprehend their eldest brother's life because their mother had given them to understand that he was destined to become the deliverer of the Jewish people. After they had received from Mary such intimations as family secrets, imagine their confusion when Jesus would make frank denials of such ideas and intentions.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to give him anything to cause problems with, did he?
Yeah.
All right. Can you go ahead?
This year, Simon started
Close to the line because I can't hear.
Okay. This year, Simon started to school, and they were compelled to sell another house. James now took charge of the teaching of his three sisters, two of whom were old enough to begin serious study. As soon as Ruth grew up, she was taken in hand by Miriam and Martha. Ordinarily, the girls of Jewish families received little education, but Jesus maintained, and his mother agreed, that girls should go to school same as boys. And since the synagogue school would not receive them, there was nothing to do but conduct a homeschool, especially for them.
Okay, and this is pretty much the same in some areas. In the Middle East, it's still the same way. They don't teach girl babies that from birth. They only teach boys, and that's because of this same mindset they've had for 1,000 years. All right, so let's come on to the next one. Throughout this year, Jesus was closely confined to the workbench. Fortunately, he had plenty of work. He was of such a superior grade. His work was such a superior grade that he was never idle, no matter how slack work might be in that region. At times, he had so much to do that James would help him. Okay, so he would have his brother help him sometimes because he got too busy to do it all.
And was James 2 years younger?
3.
3.
Yeah.
By the end of this year, he had just about made up his mind that he would, after rearing his family and seeing them married, enter publicly upon his work as a teacher of truth and as a revealer of the Heavenly Father to the world. He knew he was not to become the expected Jewish Messiah, and he concluded that it was next to useless to discuss these matters with his mother. He decided to allow her to entertain whatever ideas she might choose, since all he had said in the past had made little or no impression upon her, and he recalled that his father had never been able to say anything that would change her mind. From this year on, he talked less and less with his mother or anyone else about these problems. He was such a peculiar mission that no one living on earth could give him advice concerning its prosecution.
You think that's where we got the expression "whatever"?
Yeah.
Very much possible, right? So no matter what he told her, she still stayed with her original conclusions, didn't she? All right. You would take the next one?
He was a real
Useful father.
Oh.
Though
he was a real youthful father to the family. He spent every possible hour with the youngsters, and they truly loved him. His mother grieved to see him work so hard. She sorrowed that he was day by day toiling at the carpenter's bench, earning a living for the family instead of being, as they had so fondly planned, at Jerusalem studying with the rabbis. While there was much about her son that Mary could not understand, she did love him, and she most thoroughly appreciated the willing manner in which he shouldered the responsibility of the home.
Okay, so he took care of his family just like he was supposed to, working at the carpenter's bench, but he didn't get to go study in Jerusalem, did he? So that dream he had and his family had just went by the wayside. And so he became the man he became by his own self-study. It's kind of funny. I think about my own, back in 73 when I was contacting all these places in the Urantia Fellowship Foundation, trying to look for a school. And it worked out that there weren't any schools that I could learn the Urantia book at all. And so I had to do it on my own all these years. But, in looking back and in reality, it forced me to discipline myself to learn it and get on a routine of learning it. And I did it year after year after year. And really, that's what Jesus did. He learned his stuff through his own experience year after year after year until he was ready for his mission. And he's a lot smarter than I was, because it was I was 59 years old before I even considered teaching.
Yeah,
right?
until we met.
Yeah. So, God's got one plan for you, and you sometimes have another. So sometimes you just have to give in to God's plan, right? All right. The 17th year, AD 11. At about the time, there was considerable agitation, especially at Jerusalem in Judea, in favor of rebellion against the payment of taxes to Rome. Sounds like here, doesn't it? There was coming into existence a strong nationalist party, presently to be called the Zealots. The Zealots, unlike the Pharisees, were not willing to await the coming of the Messiah. They proposed to bring things to a head through political revolt, and that's exactly what they did at one point, right? All right. Rodney, would you take the next one?
A group of organizers from Jerusalem arrived in Galilee and were making good headway until they reached Nazareth. When they came to see Jesus, he listened carefully to them and asked many questions, but refused to join the party. He declined fully to disclose his reasons for not enlisting, and his refusal had the effect of keeping out many of his youthful fellows in Nazareth.
So he was kind of shunned, wasn't he? Because he wouldn't join the Zealots, and just like they do today. What did I do? All right. Pam, would you take the next?
Mary did her best to induce him to enlist, but she could not budge him. She went so far as to intimate that his refusal to espouse the nationalist cause at her behest was insubordination, a violation of his pledge made upon their return from Jerusalem that he would be subject to his parents. But in answer to this insinuation, he only laid a kindly hand on her shoulder and, looking into her face, said, "My mother, how could you?" And Mary withdrew her statement.
Typical motherly way, right? All right.
One of Jesus' uncles, Mary's brother Simon, had already joined this group, subsequently becoming an officer in the Galilean division. And for several years, there was something of an estrangement between Jesus and his uncle. Yeah, but he had a lot of estrangements.
Yeah, he had a lot of estrangements.
I wonder if that estrangement was from the uncle rather than.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, really,
Yeah.
because the uncle thought that it would be a good thing for him to join and be part of the rebellion, and Jesus knew he couldn't do that. He couldn't get involved with politics at all, really.
Yeah.
That was part of his charges from Emmanuel, if y'all remember. Okay.
Mhm.
Come on up again. But trouble began to brew in Nazareth. Jesus' attitude in these matters had resulted in creating a division among the Jewish youth of his city. About half had joined the nationalist organization, and the other half began the formation of an opposing group of more moderate patriots, expecting Jesus to assume the leadership. They were amazed when he refused the honor offered him, pleading as the excuse his heavy family responsibilities, which they all allowed. But the situation was still further complicated when presently a wealthy Jew, Isaac, a moneylender to the Gentiles, came forward, agreeing to support Jesus' family if he would lay down his tools and assume leadership of these Nazareth patriots, which he could not do, right? All right. Rodney.
Jesus, then scarcely 17 years of age, was confronted with one of the most delicate and difficult situations of his early life: patriotic issues, especially when complicated by tax gathering foreign oppressors, are always difficult for spiritual leaders to relate themselves to. And it was doubly so in this case, since the Jewish religion was involved in all this agitation against Rome.
Now y'all see why you should keep your politics and your religion separate, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Right? It can really devastate your life. It really
Mhm.
can. Okay. Pamela.
It's Jesus' position was made more difficult because his mother and uncle, and even his younger brother James, all urged him to join the nationalist cause. All the better Jews of Nazareth had enlisted, and those young men who had not joined the movement would all enlist the movement. Jesus changed his
The
mind.
moment.
Oh,
Jesus.
the moment.
Yeah.
But join the movement would enlist that the moment Jesus changed his mind.
Right.
He had but one wise counselor in all Nazareth, his old teacher, the Shazan, who counseled him about his reply to the Citizens Committee of Nazareth when they came to ask for his answer to the public appeal which had been made. In all Jesus' young life, this was the very first time he had consciously resorted to public strategy. Therefore, always had he depended upon a frank statement of truth to clarify the situation. But now he could not declare the full truth. He could not intimate that he was more than a man. He could not disclose his idea of the mission which awaited his attainment of a riper manhood. Despite these limitations, his religious fealty and national loyalty were directly challenged. His family was in turmoil, his youthful friends in division, and the entire Jewish contingent of the town in a hubbub. And to think that he was to blame for it all, and how innocent he had been of all intentions to make trouble of any kind, much less a disturbance of this sort.
Good thing you had a good friend in the Shazan to help him
Yeah.
out, didn't you? Right?
Yeah.
All right. Can you read it? You want me to read it? You take the next one?
Yeah, it's hard for me to see.
Something had to be done. He must state his position, and this he did bravely and diplomatically to the satisfaction of many, but not all. He adhered to the terms of his original plea, maintaining that his first duty was to his family, that a widowed mother and 8 brothers and sisters, 8 brothers and sisters, needed something more than mere money could buy, the physical necessities of life, that they were entitled to a father's watch care and guidance, and that he could not in clear conscience release himself from the obligation which a cruel accident had thrust upon him. He paid compliment to his mother and eldest brother for being willing to release him, but reiterated that loyalty to a dead father forbade his leaving the family, no matter how much money was forthcoming for their material support, making his never to be gotten statement that, I can't read that, money cannot love. In the course of this address, Jesus made several veiled references to his life mission, but explained that regardless of whether or not it might be inconsistent with the military idea, it, along with everything else in his life, had been given up in order that he might be able to discharge faithfully his obligation to his family. Everyone in Nazareth well knew he was a good father to the family, and this was a matter so near the heart of every noble Jew that Jesus' plea found an appreciative response in the hearts of many of his hearers, and some of those who were not thus minded were disarmed by a speech made by James, which, while not on the program, was delivered at this time. That very day, the Shazan had rehearsed James in the speech, but that was their secret. This is what I was talking about. He had a good friend in the
Ah.
Shazam, right? Okay, you can read this one, right?
James stated that he was sure Jesus would help to liberate his people if he, James, were only old enough to assume responsibility for the family, and that if they would only consent to allow Jesus to remain with us, to be our father and teacher, then you will have not just one leader from Joseph's family, but presently you will have 5 loyal nationalists. They're not 5 of us boys to grow up and come forth from our fathers' guidance to serve our nation. And thus did the lad bring to a fairly happy ending a very tense and threatening situation. That was a very difficult.
That was a very difficult thing, and he literally, because of the Shazam, straightened this whole thing out. And with James, right? And
Yeah.
James was right. He had 5 brothers that were going to come along that would be eligible to help them out, right, in the future.
Mhm.
So it was a good thing for them to do. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. The crisis for the time being was over, but never was this incident forgotten in Nazareth. The agitation persisted. Not again was Jesus in universal favor. The division of sentiment was never fully overcome, and this, augmented by other and subsequent occurrences, was one of the chief reasons why he moved to Capernaum in later years. Henceforth, Nazareth maintained a division of sentiment regarding the Son of Man.
So half of them liked him and half of them didn't they?
That's true likeness.
Yeah, that's what happens. Pam, would you take the next one?
Okay. James graduated at school this year and began full-time work at home in the carpenter shop. He had become a clever worker with tools and now took over the making of yokes and plows, while Jesus began to do more house finishing and expert cabinet work.
All right, so they kind of divided the labor and made more money that way too,
Mhm.
right? You can-
This year, Jesus made great progress in the organization of his mind. Gradually, he had brought his divine and human natures together, and he accomplished all this organization by intellect, by the force of his own decisions, and with only the aid of his indwelling monitor. Just such a monitor as all normal mortals on all post bestowal sun worlds have within their minds. So far, nothing supernatural had happened in this young man's career except the visit of a messenger dispatched by his elder brother Emmanuel, who once appeared to him during the night at Jerusalem.
They mentioned this, but I don't recall any story about this other than this right here.
Maybe we skipped over.
See,
What do you
so
mean?
huh?
What are you referring to?
This
About
where it says a visit, except for a visit from a messenger dispatched by his elder brother Emmanuel, who appeared for him during the night at Jerusalem.
Yeah,
Do you
doesn't say
remember
what
that?
it was about.
Yeah. Do you
yeah,
remember a story about that?
yeah. Because I asked, do you think it was a mighty messenger? Yeah, it was at night.
But what was it about?
I must be
Uh,
getting brain dead.
the
I don't.
messenger said,
What is
not to
during
be
it?
about your father's business.
Oh,
Oh,
Time to be about
okay. Is that
father's
what they're talking about here?
I
It must
see.
be. Yeah, that's right. Okay, now I'm not confused anymore. See, I knew you were good for something, Rodney.
Yeah, he was 13.
Everything, Rodney.
That was his first Passover visit.
That's right. That's right. Okay, you're forgiven. Okay, dear, would you take the next one?
Okay. 3, the 18th year, AD 12. 1.
In
In the
course.
course of this year, all the family property except the home and garden was disposed of. The last piece of Capernaum property, except the equity in one other, already mortgaged, was sold. The proceeds were used for taxes to buy some new tools for James and to make a payment on the old family supply and repairs shop near the caravan lot, which Jesus now proposed to buy back since James was old enough to work at the house shop and help Mary around the house about the home. With the financial pressure thus eased for the time being, Jesus decided to take James to the Passover. They went up to Jerusalem to a day early to be alone, going by way of Samaria. They walked, and Jesus told James about the historic places en route, as his father had taught him on a similar journey 5 years before.
So he passed on all that wisdom that he got from his own father, and here's the picture of where they went during that period of time. So he passed on all that wisdom his own father had given him during his trips with his father to Jerusalem before. All right. Let's see. In passing through Samaria, they saw many strange sights. On this journey, they talked over many of their problems, personal, family, and national. James was a very religious type of lad. While he did not fully agree with his mother regarding the little he knew of the plans concerning Jesus' life work, he did look forward to the time when he would be able to assume responsibility for the family so that Jesus could begin his mission. He was very appreciative of Jesus taking him up to the Passover, and they talked over the future more fully than ever before. So Jesus was really preparing James for what was coming up in the future in him taking over the family. So, which is very good. And there's the map of the trip there. Y'all can look that up on the main website. Got a big map. Okay. Rodney, would you take this one?
Yes, Jesus did much thinking as they journeyed through Samaria, particularly at Bethel, and went drinking from Jacob's well. He and his brother discussed the traditions of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He did much to prepare James for what he was about to witness at Jerusalem, thus seeking to lessen the shock such as he himself had experienced on his first visit to the temple. But James was not so sensitive to some of these sights. He commented on the perfunctory and heartless manner in which some of the priests performed their duties, but on the whole greatly enjoyed his sojourn at Jerusalem.
So the sacrifices didn't bother him as much as it did Jesus, is what they're saying here, right?
Mhm.
All right, and there's the map of the trip itself, the way they went, the way they came back. All right. Pam, would you take the next one?
Jesus took James to Bethany for the Passover supper. Simon had been laid to rest with his fathers, and Jesus presided over this household at the head of the Passover family, no, as the head of the Passover family, having brought the Paschal lamb from the temple.
Okay, do we know who Simon they're talking about? This is Lazarus' dad, right?
Yeah.
The Lazarus household.
So I have a question.
Okay.
The Paschal
Lamb. Yeah.
was that actually a sacrificial lamb?
Yeah, it's one of the lambs that they sacrificed, and the people would bring their lambs to the priests, and they would sacrifice the lamb, and then they would take the lamb back home, and that would be their supper.
So apparently, even the oxen or whatever was sacrificed, they could eat.
That's right. Yeah. Right. Now, y'all remember from when we studied, I'm going to bring up something gross, when we studied the human sacrifice.
Yeah.
Remember that from the barbarian ages? When they made this human sacrifice, the priests had to eat the first piece, right?
Ugh.
Yeah,
Uh,
of a
The
person.
Vikings even did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, the priests had the honor, if you want to call it that, of eating the first piece of flesh. And
Oh,
that
it's
these
horrible.
are interesting slides. Let me see if I can find the slide here and give y'all some text, the explanation of what this is. This is, I don't have the explanation there. I believe that,
I think it's an ark
yeah, I think you're right. No,
for
here it
storing
is.
the scripture.
Tomb, no?
Okay, it's the bones of the family. Okay,
Oh,
it says
Ossuary.
hmm.
excuse me. Inscription stated it contains the bones of the family of Nicanor, the Alexandrian who made the gates, the pearly gates or the gold gates, and the Hebrew inscriptium Necaor Alexandria. Necaor of Alexandria presented a pair of bronze gates to the temple in Jerusalem, which were famous for their beauty. All right.
A beautiful gate.
The beautiful gate, the gate beautiful, they used to call it. Remember that?
Yeah.
All right.
Hmm,
Now I've lost track of who's next.
I think it's Diane.
Diane? All right.
After the Passover supper, Mary sat down to talk with James while Martha, Lazarus, and Jesus talked together far into the night. The next day they attended the temple services, and James was received into the Commonwealth of Israel. That morning, as they paused on the brow of Olivet to view the temple, while James exclaimed in wonder, Jesus gazed on Jerusalem in silence. James could not comprehend his brother's demeanor. That night they again returned to Bethany and would have departed for home the next day, but James was insistent on their going back to visit the temple, explaining that he wanted to hear the teachers. And while this was true, secretly in his heart, he wanted to hear Jesus participate in the discussions. And as he had heard his mother tell about, accordingly, they went to the temple and heard of discussions, but Jesus asked no questions. It all seemed so
Puerile.
puerile and insignificant to this awakening mind of man and God. He could only pity them. James was disappointed that Jesus said nothing. To his inquiries, Jesus only made reply, "My hour has not yet come."
Okay. So he didn't have any discussions with the priest or anything like that, like he had done before, because he had grown up a little bit more and he realized that he was wasting his breath. Right.
Yeah.
The next day they journeyed home by Jericho and the Jordan Valley, and Jesus recounted many things by the way, including his former trip over this road when he was 13 years old.
Hmm.
Yeah, he'd done that with his father. Rodney?
Upon returning to Nazareth, Jesus began work in the old family repair shop and was greatly cheered by being able to meet so many people each day from all parts of the country and surrounding districts. Jesus truly loved people, just common folks. Each month, he made his payments on the shop and with James' help, continued to provide for the family.
Right, so life went on with the Nazareth family, right?
Mhm.
All right, Pamela.
Several times a year, when visitors were not present thus to function, Jesus continued to read the Sabbath scriptures at the synagogue and many times offered comments on the lesson, but usually he so selected the passages that comment was unnecessary. He was skillful, so arranging the order of the reading of the various passages that the one would illuminate the other. He never failed, weather permitting, to take his brothers and sisters out on Sabbath afternoons for their nature stroll.
Okay, so Sunday was their time to spend together then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Saturday.
All right.
Saturday.
Yep.
About this time, the Chasm inaugurated a young men's club for philosophical discussion, which met at the homes of different members and often at his own home. And Jesus became a prominent member of this group. By this means, he was enabled to regain some of the local prestige which he had lost at the time of the recent nationalistic controversies.
So it gained favor back with some of the people of Nazareth because of this social life. His social life, while restricted, was not wholly neglected, and he had many warm friends and staunch admirers among both the young men and young women of Nazareth. Rodney?
Yes. In September, Elizabeth and John came to visit the Nazareth family. John, having lost his father, intended to return to the Judean hills to engage in agriculture and sheep raising, unless Jesus advised him to remain in Nazareth to take up carpentry or some other line of work. They did not know that the Nazareth family was practically penniless. The more Mary and Elizabeth talked about their sons, the more they became convinced that it would be good for the two young men to work together and see more of each other.
Of course they didn't, did they?
Right.
Yeah.
The mother's planning.
Mother's planning. That's right.
Jesus and John had many talks together, and they talked over some very intimate and personal matters. When they had finished this visit, they decided not again to see each other until they should meet in their public service after the Heavenly Father should call them to their work. John was tremendously impressed by what he saw at Nazareth, that he should return home and labor for the support of his mother. He became convinced that he was to be a part of Jesus' life mission, but he saw that Jesus was to occupy many years with the rearing of his family. So he was much more content to return to his home and settle down to the care of their little farm and to minister to the needs of his mother. And to never again did John and Jesus see each other until that day by the Jordan when the Son of Man presented himself for baptism.
Okay, we have to remember that John's father was a priest in the temple, right? So he got a stipend from the temple all the time as he was alive, and probably his mother received that until she died. So they didn't have financial problems like Jesus did in his family, right? So they were fairly well-to-do, not well off, but well-to-do. They didn't have to worry about money because of the temple funds and stuff. So after John's dad died, though, shortly after that, his mother died, and so then that source of funds dried up. That's when John took to the hills and raised sheep, that sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, go ahead, dear.
On Saturday afternoon, December 3 of this year, death for the second time struck at this Nazareth family. Little Amos, their baby brother, died after a week's illness with a high fever. After passing through this time of sorrow with her firstborn son as her only support, Mary at last, and in the fullest sense, recognized Jesus as the real head of the family. And he was truly a worthy head.
Okay, so that was the first of his brothers and sisters that died, right? All right. For 4 years, their standard of a living had steadily declined. Year by year, they felt the pinch of increasing poverty. By the close of this year, they face one of the more difficult experiences of all their uphill struggles. Jesus had not yet begun to earn much. And
James.
they, huh?
James.
James.
I mean, James, I'm sorry. James had not yet began to earn much, and the expenses of a funeral on top of everything else staggered them. But Jesus would only say to his anxious and grieving mother, I have to read that from another screen, y'all. Mother Mary, sorrow will not help us. We are all doing our best, and a mother's smile, perchance, might even inspire us to do better. Day by day, we are strengthened for these tasks by the hope of better days ahead. His sturdy and practical optimism was truly contagious. All the children lived in an atmosphere of anticipation of better times and better things. But this hopeful courage contributed mightily to the development of strong and noble characters in spite of the depressiveness of their poverty. So they were having a hard time, right? Rodney.
Jesus possessed the ability effectively to mobilize all his powers of mind, soul, and body on the task immediately in hand. He could concentrate his deep thinking mind on the one problem which he wished to solve, and this, in connection with his untiring patience, enabled him serenely to endure the trials of a difficult mortal existence, to live as if he were seeing him who is invisible.
So he felt like his father was with him all the time through this, didn't he? Right? That's the way attitude we should have.
For sure. The 19th year. By this time, Jesus and Mary were getting along much better. She regarded him less as a son. He had become to her more a father to her children. Each day's life swarmed with practical and immediate difficulties. Less frequently, they spoke of his life work, for as time passed, all their thought was mutually devoted to the support and upbringing of their family of 4 boys and 3 girls.
Okay, let's stop right there for tonight, and we'll start there again on Thursday, so that we can do our prayer for tonight. And let me share this. Will you want to do the prayer of acceptance?
I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By this same faith, I became a child of God, and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe of Nibbidon, as Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, it was a good meeting tonight. Thank you all out there from YouTube and all my Facebook listeners. If you're still out there coming to YouTube, don't forget to subscribe so you'll know what's going on. I sent out the next 3 chapters attached to the book I'm working on today to everyone. Anybody got any critiques or anything I need to change in it, please let me know if you are reading along with me. Okay. So we got 6 chapters. I'm trying to do a chapter a day early in the morning before I get my brain fogged up doing all this other stuff. So y'all let me think what you think of it. If you don't like it, tell me.
Sure.
It's going to be 26 chapters before I'm done. So it's going to be a pretty good sized book. Okay, well, thank you for coming, everybody. And we will see everybody on Thursday once again. And we love you guys.
Love you guys. Thank you,
right.
Roger.
You're welcome. See you
Roger,
then.
remember Thursday, I'm in a ceramic class.
That's right. Okay. We won't look for you.
I've got a few more weeks.
Okay. All right.
Take
Learn
care.
good. All right.